Hey, what up guys? Welcome back to my programming channel. And today I want to talk to you about the whole war between Spotify and Apple Music and how it affects the whole country of Sweden. So let's talk about it. In Sweden we have this startup, or nowadays they are a big company, guys. It's called Spotify, and some of you maybe use it in your daily life, because it has expanded from being just in Europe, and now it's also in the US, and I guess some countries in Asia as well. So it's a music streaming service where you pay a certain fee every month, and you can listen to any song you want on demand. So their biggest competitor is Apple Music. And they are both racing to become the dominant player in this area. They both want a majority of users using their service, and they both want to more or less become a monopoly, guys. And that is the reason. That is the main reason why they are so focusing on growing, and they are losing money every single year, both Spotify and Apple Music. And that is because they are really focusing on growing, and all their resources are going to growth. So they're not profitable yet. However, guys, the one player that becomes a dominant player will have the monopoly. And once you have a monopoly, guys, then you can become profitable, because there are so many use cases and so many business models you can build once you have a monopoly, because those business models only become viable once you have a monopoly. For example, Google has more or less a monopoly on search. There are other search engines. However, you could basically say that Google has a monopoly on search, and because they have this monopoly, their ad business is really profitable. And so the same rules apply to Spotify versus Apple Music war. Whoever becomes the main player will have the chance to become profitable and to really monetize their user base. And the reason why it's so important for Sweden, guys, is because Spotify is a very big role model for many Swedish startups. Everyone wants to become the next Spotify, but in some other area. And in Stockholm we have a vibrant startup scene. Many people want to create startups. Many people do create startups, and they have Spotify as a role model. And before we had King as a role model as well, but now they are acquired by Activision, I think. And so we have a couple of such big companies that everyone looks up to, and Spotify is one of them. And so would it if Spotify loses this war, we will lose our role model. So and that is why I think it's so important for Sweden to have Spotify, to have we don't have King anymore, but when we had King, it was it contributed to the whole startup scene in Sweden. And I think when you have role models in your own city, it really pushes you to create your own startup, and you start dreaming big. I think in cities where you don't have any successful companies, it's harder to find the energy and to find inspiration. However, in Stockholm, we've had a couple of such companies, and I think they really contributed to the whole startup culture we have here, because Stockholm has a pretty strong startup culture. And so that is why the whole Spotify versus Apple Music war is so important to Sweden as a nation. Because startups and starting companies is really popular in Sweden, and Spotify is among those companies that give motivation to people, to young people, to start their own startups. And so we have some news when it comes to this war, and the news is that Apple. Let me resize this window, and the news is, guys, is that Apple now have a partnership with Musical.ly, or Musical.ly. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And so Musical.ly is this app that is used among younger users. Maybe people who are 13, 14, 12 years old maybe, and it's an app where you can create music videos. So you can take a popular song and you can record your own music video, and it's a popular app among the younger user base. And so Apple now has a partnership with Musical.ly, where Musical.ly basically has access to full-length songs rather than just some. Let me just. Let's see, full-length songs rather than just 15 seconds clips, which they had before. So now, as a Musical.ly user, you will be able to use full-length songs based on Apple Music streaming service, and this is really a move by Apple to capture the younger user base, because these young people who use Musical.ly, they will now see Apple Music in their Musical.ly app, like you see here, listen on Apple Music inside Musical.ly. And I think this will really give them an edge when it comes to this young user base and the young users. So and they are planning to cooperate more with Musical.ly and do more partnerships. So it will be interesting to follow this development and to see if Apple will be successful in acquiring this young user base. Guys, what do you think? Is this a smart move by Apple to integrate with Musical.ly? Spotify has done a pretty big integration with Facebook a couple of years ago, so Apple is doing in a slightly different way. They are focusing on a specific group, that is young people, while Facebook tried to integrate with, while Spotify tried to integrate with Facebook and just make it appear more on Facebook. And I know some people that like this whole Facebook integration on Spotify, but I know also a lot of people that don't use the whole Facebook experience on Spotify at all. So it will be interesting to see how this partnership works out. And so if we think long term, we think 5-10 years into the future, guys, do you think Apple Music will win, or do you think Spotify will win the music streaming war and the music streaming and they will acquire the whole music streaming business? I think. Apple has so much muscle, so much resources to really wipe Spotify out of the stage. However, guys, it could be the case that Spotify has some agreements and some contracts with music labels, which gives them advantage over Apple. I'm not sure on this, and I haven't read that much about it, but I know that some music labels own Spotify, so they own some percentage of Spotify. So it could be the case, guys, that they have some kind of advantage when it comes to record labels and music labels. And also, another reason why Apple might fail in the whole music industry, and that is because Apple is behind on several fronts. I mean, they are leading when it comes to smartphones. No question about that. Or actually, there is a question about that as well. They are still leading in the Western world. Like in Sweden, iPhones are the most popular phones. However, in other parts, Android is more popular. And so in this area, they are not leading globally. However, they're leading locally in the Western world. And so they are behind when it comes to artificial intelligence as well. If you compare Siri to Google Assistant, you will realize how much better Google Assistant is. And that is because Google has really invested in artificial intelligence, while Apple have prioritized our privacy more. So Apple don't really read our messages and use our data in the same way as Google does, or at least they say they don't use it. While Google is using our data in order to train their artificial intelligence models, guys. So Apple is behind when it comes to artificial intelligence. They are behind when it comes to smartphones, if we think globally. So guys, I'm listing this areas because Apple is behind in several areas, and they're now also behind in the music area because Spotify is still the leading player. So I think it really comes to prioritizing. Apple might as well prioritize artificial intelligence instead of music, and they just throw the music business out. I'm not sure, but it could be the case that Apple will focus on other areas. So despite the fact that they have so much money and so much muscles to really wipe Spotify off, it might not just be the most important target for them. It could really well be the case that they will focus on artificial intelligence instead. Who knows, guys? What do you think? Do you think Apple will win in 10 years, or do you think Spotify will win in 10 years? It would be really interesting to hear your opinions, guys. And if you are a new viewer and you like technology, you like programming, you like app development, artificial intelligence, you should definitely subscribe, guys, because you will find this channel interesting. I myself, as a software developer, I work with apps, websites, I work with artificial intelligence and machine learning, so you will really find this interesting. And I post videos every single day, guys. That's it for today. Today we talked about Apple Music, Spotify, and Musical.ly. I'll see you guys tomorrow.